that the first two stages, that is the initiation or the concept stage and the planning stage, are basically involving the kind of check on your project idea, its feasibility study, and some sort of appraisal. Appraisal, as I said, to check that whether this project is viable in terms of technology. For example, suppose you got an idea about a project and you are thinking on it, but the kind of technology that you are thinking for that project is not appropriate or maybe obsolete. So in that case, maybe in this planning stage itself, when you will do the technical appraisal, you will get to know that, okay, to carry on these kind of projects, there are better technology or state-of-art technologies which should be used instead of the obsolete or kind of old technologies. So all these kind of assessments takes place, and there are a lot of plannings, as you can understand, in the first two stages. That is the planning and the concept. Once it is approved and passes through successfully, all the stakeholders get the green signal that yes, this project is good in terms of business prospects, there will be market, there will be commercial benefit, there is no financial issue, there is no managerial issue. Managerial issue is something, for example, when I'm talking about appraisal, there is a appraisal called managerial appraisal. Managerial appraisal is taking into account whether as a company or as a client or owner of the project, you have the managerial capability to handle it or not. That is managerial appraisal. Of course, we'll discuss these appraisals again somewhere in the coming times. These are the first two stages, which are basically covering all these things, like all your planning and testing, feasibility assessments, etc. Of course, risk. Risk is also another important aspect in project planning. You have to visualize that what kind of risk that may come in the future and how to counter it. Right? Although it may not be always risk proof, but still, if I have some alternative plans like plan B, plan C kind of things, it is better to pass through that kind of situations. So risk assessment is one of the very interesting area of research, or I mean, interest of our business people or project management. So how to find or know the kind of risk it may involve and how to get out of that. What are the risk mitigation plans you have? All right, so let me quickly read through these stages. So for example, the first stage is the concept or initiation. There, identify the need, establish feasibility, then in terms of budget, schedule, project team formation, then financing need. Financing means suppose you do not have all the capital, then who will be the financer? Means you may have to raise money or capital. It may be from some financial institutions like bank or other financing sources are there apart from the banks. Apart from that, whether any chance of taking the raising the capital from the market, like if it is a listed company, then maybe from shares, etc. Then looking into the various risks, identify the alternatives and present proposal. Right. So typically these are the steps. Maybe if you refer some other book, maybe some other things will mention. But the bottom line is that it is just the initial planning that you have to complete in the first stage. Second stage is basically a bit detailed compared to the first one. Maybe the repetition of the same things, but at a very stringent level. That is the planning level. You are now serious about the project, and you are going to allocate some funds for that because that may need some kind of research, some kind of data collection, data analysis. You may have to take the help of some consultant services. So you are now a little bit serious. So in the planning stage, certain things happen which may involve some investment. Like you have to make your budget plan, you have to take the schedule plan, you have to perform the schedule plan, and you have to again check the market condition. You may have to do some market survey whether the product or service that you are going to give or offer out of this project is having a potential market or not. So all these things happen in the second stage, which is a bit detailed, as I said. Then reassess the risk, then check for the alternatives. When I'm saying alternatives, it may be in terms of the selection of the site, right, where you'll have the project, whether there is some alternative place or site for that, which is offering a better option. So it may be the site, it may be the technology also, as I said in the beginning. So whether the kind of technology you are going to adopt is the best one at this present time, or there is some better alternative. So you look for all the alternatives, because once you start the execution, then reverting back is costly. So this is the last stage at which you want to make sure that all things are at the best level. So these are the second stage. So develop plan, block diagrams, sketches, drawings, of course, the architectural drawings and plans for that, when model building, prototyping, everything happens in this planning stage before going to the actual execution. Okay, so there is a second stage, and once that is being approved, obtain approval to proceed, then comes the execution. Now you are on the field, on the ground. You have started releasing the work orders, you have started releasing the tenders, and you have started procuring the materials. You have maybe hiring some people for that particular project. Right. So all these things now happens on the field, means on the ground. So setup organization is something that is in the second module we discuss. You have to set a kind of organizational structure for the project, means the manpower, the human resource. So what are the human resource which will be allocated for this project, and what will be their hierarchy? That is also important. Hierarchy means who will be the boss, who will report to whom, and what is their function, right? So there are many functions in the project, right? Some are related with design, some are related with production or manufacturing, or things like that. Or maybe some people are related with finance. They are just looking into the finance of this project. What is the budget, whether it is going as per the budget or not. So there are varieties of functions. You cannot assign a person who is an expert of finance to production or to design. So based on the specialization, you have to form the organizational structure at the hierarchy. So then things like working drawings and specifications, this is regarding the scope of the project. You have to fulfill the scope. So all these things, design review, procure equipment, as I said. Now you will physically get the equipments or any kind of machine, etc. for the project. So you have to purchase it, or you have to take it on a lease, whatever the case. So that you have to start now. Procure construction services. Of course, this example, as I said in the beginning, is in the context of a construction project. That's why you can find some equipments, construction services. But if it is a different kind of project, then maybe these points will be a little bit different. Produce physical asset, quality assurance, control, verify performance, modify. Again, look, all these things. They are part of the monitor or control function, as we have discussed in the previous class, in the previous slide perhaps, yes. So this performance control and execution, they go in tandem, means they must be in sync. So when you have something going wrong, it should feed back and you have to take the corrective action. That is all part of execution. Okay, so progress monitoring. Progress monitoring, as you can see in this third stage. So you have to progress from time to time, whether it is as per the schedule or some activities are lagging behind. So if it is lagging behind, then how to expedite it? What are the remedies you can do? Then finally, deliver facility. Means once your execution is complete, that itself means that your deliverable, whether it is a product or service or a result that you can deliver, right? That is in the final stage of use. That is the execution. And last stage, as you know, is the closure. So it is mentioned here as transfer. Of course, the meaning is transfer. Transfer in the sense, if there are two parties are involved, one is the client who is paying for that, and another is the service provider, then it must be transferred after the project is completed. It must be, perhaps yesterday I discussed a bit about it. It has to be nicely and swiftly transferred to the client who is paying for that. Maybe some guidelines, how to maintain it, how to operate it. Maybe you have to give some more time with your staffs there to stay for some time. Once their staffs get acquainted with the operations and system, you can leave that place. So this way it is called transfer or closure. At the same time, you have to close all the transactions with your existing suppliers, vendors, or any other third-party service provider. Like I gave you the example of security guards, right? So there are many such services. One takes the help of during the project execution. So that all these accounts has to be closed, and it should be, I mean, it is technically called full and final. So in the language of finance, so all the dues and everything must be settled full and final, so that there should not be any dispute or any kind of dues which will linger on, and it will create some problems later. So that is called the closure of the project. That is the transfer. Of course, you have to keep the record of all your activities, right? That is a regular practice. That at the end of that, you will prepare a report of all your activities and experiences, whatever risks you find, and how you have addressed it. So that also becomes a useful document for you as a company, because if you are project based companies, then you are taking up projects one after the other. So the kind of experience that you have learned through this project execution may be helpful in some future as some future reference. So for that matter, usually the report at the end of this project has to be prepared by the project manager, that this way all these things are happen over the period of time. So that is also a kind of very useful report for your own reference in a future time. So as you can see in the last one, settle all accounts, transfer materials, review and acceptance, close all records, right? So these are the kind of things. So deliver final report. This final report is what I am referring to, that you have to mention on everything what you have experienced throughout. So that is the final report. And transfer responsibility, right? So this way, these are the stages of a project life cycle. There is another figure, almost the same thing, but you can quickly see, okay, initiation, planning, execution, and closure. So the salient points are mentioned here. For example, in initiation, processes performed to define a new project or a phase. Okay. Planning means establish the scope of the project and define the course of action required to meet the objective of the project or the phase. Right. There are many activities are within that, but the main objectives are mentioned here. And you can see here, this execution and planning is a kind of a closed loop kind of thing is here, because there is a feedback is there. If during the execution something you found that has to be corrected, so it can be referred back to the previous stage, and it can be corrected also, be it with the design or anything else. So that is track, review, and regulate the progress and performance of the project, identify corrective actions if required. Okay, so we already have discussed this. Now, execution means complete the work as defined in the project plan, or that is the scope. Finally, closure. Finalize all activities across all process groups to formally close the project or the phase, right? So officially, you can say that all the kind of dealings and transactions are officially closed. So you can be, I mean, satisfied that is nothing is left to be done. So that gives you a kind of closure statement. Okay, again, those same phases are being explained point-wise, means what are the typical activities or kind of things one has to do during these various phases. Again, I will quickly go through. Of course, at the end of this module, I will share this PPT so that you can go through. Okay, so in the project initiation phase, we have initiate the project, identify the project manager, develop the project charter, conduct a feasibility study, receptive to new ideas, vision of future growth, long-term objective, your strength, weakness, opportunity, threat analysis, preliminary project analysis, and project appraisal. So you can remember two terms here which are important. That is the project feasibility study and project appraisal, right? Both are of same nature, but this project appraisal is again bit detailed and bit exhaustive compared to feasibility study. Feasibility is just a kind of at the first look, without any much analysis or data support, you can come to a conclusion that whether this project is feasible or not, right? Just I gave you the example that in a BTech project, designing and fabricating a vehicle to fly, see, may not be feasible because of cost constraint, because of time constraints, etc. So that way, so in the first look also, it is getting rejected because it's not feasible. So if something is feasible, then you are going for the appraisal. Appraisal is much deeper, and you are doing the analysis based on maybe some data, some kind of survey, some kind of expert opinion, who are experienced in the similar projects, or some consultants. So there are various sources through which you can do the project appraisal. So basically, after the project appraisal, the project idea is accepted. Thereafter, there are few chances of that being rejected. So that way, project appraisal is much deeper compared to feasibility. Although both addresses similar nature of things, and both also are having same type of criteria. Criteria means, suppose there is technical feasibility, there is financial feasibility, economic feasibility. Similarly, you have technical appraisal, financial appraisal, economic appraisal, market appraisal, right? Managerial appraisal. So in that way, you should understand these two terms. Other than that, the rest of the terms are, very, you can add them with your common sense, that at the initial stage, what can be a company can make a check on the, or assess the project's idea. That is very, very obvious. And these lists are not fixed, means different sources will give you different points because it is a very subjective thing. Right. So these are the, again, further details of the initiation stage or the conception. So create an idea, identify the project vision and objectives, define the complete scope of the project, list all the critical project deliverables, state the customers and project stakeholders, list the key roles and their responsibilities, create an organizational structure for the project. This organizational structure is the human resource, as I told you. Document the overall implementation plan, list any risks, issues, and assumptions, appoint the project team, set up the project office, perform a phase review. Okay, so these are more detailed kind of activities or tasks one need to do during the initiation stage. So you can see as you progress with time, as it is getting approved, means people are accepting the idea, the policymakers are agreeing with the idea, then slowly the things will build up, right? All these tasks are not happening suddenly. It may be happening sequentially, right? Suppose the idea is getting approved from the top management, then they may create some project team, right? They may create some project manager. They will assign someone that you look into this matter, right? So this way, one after the other, these tasks can be, taken up, and they happen in a sequential order, right? For example, document the overall implementation plan. So it will come later. Once the idea is getting accepted, then it will come. Similarly, organizational structure. Who will be the persons who will deal with the project? What will be their hierarchy? So these things happen one after the other. Then you may set up a project office for that. Again, it depends that if it is of that nature. Okay, so these are the detail initiation stage activities. Similarly, in the project planning phase, you have organize and staff the project, develop a project plan. As I said, although they are look similar, but here it is more detailed and more exhaustive compared to initiation stage, right? So you will have the budgets here, you will have the schedule here, you will have all the risk assessment here, right? Resource considerations. Resource means all the 4 M's I told you in the first class, right? All the resources considerations. Resources means it includes your money, material, machine, and manpower. So what are the resources you will need and how to arrange for that? So if there is some financial need also, you will consider. You have to take some loans, you have to raise money. So all these things. So that is planning. So create a project plan. This is the second stage, of course. Create a project plan, create a resource plan, create financial plan, create a quality plan, create a communication plan, create a risk plan, contact the suppliers, right? You are not placing the orders, but you may contact them, right? So these are all in the planning stage. So let us proceed. This is the third stage and the most important stage where your efforts are maximum. If you see that graph, the height of that graph is maximum in this stage because now you are on the ground. So you are executing the project plan, managing the project plan, implement the project's results, organizing the team and the work, clear cost, time, performance goals. And so you must move towards the scope of the project. So project commissioning. Commissioning means that installation of your facilities. So project monitoring with regard to cost, value of work and time. So you have to monitor it. So last one is project control. So as you remember, in the execution, you have that control and monitoring is also there. So simultaneously, you have to monitor the progress of the project and you have to take corrective measures or actions, right? So that is also part of your execution. So as per the project plan or those to fulfill the project scope within the given budget and schedule, you need to, of course, there is something called breakdown of your project work structure. You will break down your whole project into small work packages, right? So you have to perform each of these work packages, right, one at a time, or they may have some relationship also, precedence relationships, but they happens at a particular time. You have your schedule that when you will complete this particular work structure, work package, then you will go to the next one. For example, construction of a house. If you will break down construction of a house, you will find that there are many work packages here. So digging of the foundation may be one work, then maybe piling work, then maybe construction of the walls, then maybe some RCC structure, then maybe internal plastering and whitewashing, electrical fittings, water supply. So there are many work packages. They are not related to each other, right? So you have to divide the project in such a way that you can identify a clear and distinct, right? Distinct kind of work, because the digging of foundation cannot be clubbed with maybe RCC structure. They are different nature. So you may give this digging of the foundation to some contractors or some people who are specialized in it, and you can give this RCC work to some other one, right? So you have to identify this distinct nature of this work, and you have to plan accordingly that how to execute these individual works so that when you combine all these activities, your whole project will be completed this way. So this is in the project execution phase. All right. So finally, this is the closure or the transfer or the closeout, you can see. So document the lessons learned. This is the point I told you in the beginning, that document the lessons learned during the project, because it may be useful for you for your future reference. After implementation review, you just cannot walk away from the project after completing. You have to be there for some time. So that is some kind of after implementation review, right? You have some responsibility that the client who is paying for it is not having any issues. So that is after implementation. Provide performance feedback, close out contracts, complete administrative closeout, deliver project completion report, physical handover to user after commissioning. Accounting, of course, this physical handover to user, these are mostly used for turnkey kind of projects, suppose. But if you are doing the project for your own company, then may not be there is some handover, physical handover. Accounting and report writing, disbanding of project team. Yes, this also useful. Suppose you have created a project team for that project, and once this project is complete, you have to disband them, or you have to again reallocate them to the parent company so that they can be engaged in some other work. Otherwise, they will say that we are associated with that project, although it is already completed. So learning from the experience. So these are all in the project closure. So these are the four stages of the project life cycle, and we have spent substantial time in it to understand, and I hope you got the idea what exactly is life cycle PLC. Now coming to the next topic for our discussion, I hope that maybe let me start. Let us see. There is something called the project constraints, right? Project constraints, and there are three constraints. Three main constraints, of course, but some people say there are four constraints, but three are main. The fourth one is assumed to be there. There is no need to mention it, and that is quality. If you need that quality to be specified, then there are four constraints. Otherwise, there are three constraints. That's why it is called triple constraint. The triple constraint of project, and they actually form a kind of triangle. So it is also called the iron triangle of the project, right? Okay. Every project is constrained in different ways by its these three red font things you can see: scope, time, cost. Time you can call as schedule. So basically, scope, time is nothing but your schedule, and cost again better term is budget. So scope, schedule, and budget. These are the three terms. I again repeat, the triple constraints of the project are scope, budget, and schedule. These are the three constraints which keep lot of pressure, right, on the project manager. If a single person is entitled to complete the project with his own responsibility, then he will face all these pressures from these three things: scope, budget, and schedule, right? So scope, we already know what work will be done, the boundary, the specifications, the dimensions, the features, that is scope. So when you are executing the project, you have to fulfill this, right? Each and everything which is mentioned in the project plan or in the project scope document, you have to fulfill it. You cannot compromise on that. But practically what happens when you start executing that, there will be many situations in which you will come across where you may think of compromising on these scopes because of many reasons. I'm not saying just dishonesty. Of course, dishonesty is applicable in terms of these government projects of these roads, bridges, etc. They play with this particular constraint. The contractor or the person who are handling these road projects and bridges and flyovers, they play with this constraint, that is scope, right? Scope is the dimension or the specification which is mentioned in the tender document. But it is very easy for them to play with this one because let us say the proportion of the cement and concrete, etc., in that RCC structure, right? They may play with that. Although dimensionally it may look like that, but quality is compromised. So scope they will not fulfill properly. right? They may fulfill the budget and the schedule, right, which are easy for them maybe to complete, but they will play with this constraint to make some extra benefit or money. Anyway, so these are the three constraints which the project manager has to handle properly and have a balance act to complete the project successfully. Of course, quality is at the center of this triangle, so it is not mentioned because it is assumed that it is understandable that you will not compromise on the quality, right? Time goals is the schedule. As I told you, time is nothing but your schedule. So you have to complete the project within the given schedule time. How long should it take to complete? That is the time goals. Then finally the budget. Whatever budget is given, one has to fulfill within that. If you ask for extra budget during the execution, then that itself will have a lot of problems for the project. Right? It may be granted, it may not be granted. You have to give sufficient reasons why you need extra money, why it is not properly planned, things like that. So it is the project manager's duty to balance these three often competing goals. Why they are conflicting or in trade-off, as you can understand, that suppose you want to have a timely completion of the project, but because of some reasons you need extra resources to do that. Suppose instead of one machine, if you can have two machines, then you can complete the project in time, right? But for two machines, you need more expenditure, right? So that will affect this budget, the last one, the cost. So they are in trade-off. All the three are in trade-off. If you want to improve some factor, the other factors will get also affected. So you have to play a kind of balance act to satisfy all the three objectives. Otherwise, they are in conflict. Okay, successful project management means meeting all three goals, of course, and satisfying the project's sponsor. The client who is paying for that is also called sponsor. Again, these are in the context of there is a client and there is a service provider. Even if it is not there, it is the same company which is handling a project. Then also to some extent, these things are applied, right? There will be a project manager who will be assigned for the project, right? He's from the same company, but he will be the project manager for that particular project. There will be a project team, right? So that does not mean that you are free to spend anything, right? Then there will be also a project budget, project schedule. You have to fulfill all those conditions.